In this video, I'm going to solve another lab from the PortSwigger Web Security Academy, and this one will involve uploading a web shell to a web application. I know a lot of people that watch my videos are specifically interested in mobile hacking, so you might not be as interested in some of these web security labs that I do. I think it's important to understand though that if you are doing mobile hacking, those Android and iOS apps also use APIs just like web applications. So a lot of these vulnerabilities that I talk about in these labs also apply to mobile applications. So just because I'm doing a web security lab that is about a web application vulnerability doesn't mean that that wouldn't also apply to a mobile application. But let's go ahead and get started on the lab. And the lab that I'm going to be solving in this video is web shell upload via path traversal. And the instructions say this lab contains a vulnerable image upload function. The server is configured to prevent execution of user supplied files, but this restriction can be bypassed by exploiting a secondary vulnerability. To solve the lab, upload a basic PHP web shell and use it to exfiltrate the contents of the file home/carlos/secret. Submit the secret using the button provided in the lab banner. So as usual, I'm going to go ahead and open the lab in a new tab, and I'm also going to go ahead and open Burp Suite. Once that lab launches, then I'm going to copy and paste the URL into the browser inside Burp Suite, and now I'm able to view that traffic in my proxy HTTP history. So now I'm going to go ahead and log into my account with the credentials that they gave us in the instructions, and we see that this account has an option to upload an avatar. And this is going to be where we're going to find that file upload vulnerability where we can upload a web shell. And just to see what this avatar looks like and what the whole workflow is to access it, we're going to go ahead and upload a file. I'm just going to download the JPEG of my YouTube logo and I'm going to upload that and then we'll see what it does. So now we see I have an avatar uploaded, and now we see when we loaded that page, we had this GET request to the file/avatars/that JPEG file. And just a little side note, if you are doing this lab yourself, or if you're doing anything involving like uploading images or anything like that, you want to go up to the filter settings, and you want to make sure that images is checked, because by default it might be unchecked, and then you wouldn't see any of those requests involving fetching images. So now that we know what that workflow looks like to upload a file and then view that file in the application, now let's try to make our web shell. I'm just going to write up a very simple little PHP web shell, and I'm going to do that just by running vim and then create webshell.php. And I'm just going to have this very simple one-liner PHP file that's going to echo the contents of /home/carlos/secret, which is the specific location that we were tasked to get in this lab. And of course, if you're doing something more complex where you needed to like run shell commands or something and not just get the contents of a specific file, then you could do a more complicated shell that involves maybe talking back to your home machine and you can actually get shell access and run commands. But because this lab only requires us to get the contents of a specific file, I'm just going to keep it simple and have this one-liner little file that gets those contents. But now that I have that web shell, I'm going to go to choose file again, and I'm going to select that webshell.php that I just created, and I'm going to click upload. And it says the file has been uploaded, so I'm going to go back to my account. And the image is not displayed, which is to be expected because it's not really an image, it's a PHP file. And we see this GET request to the file/avatar/webshell.php. And when we select that, what we would hope to see is in the response, it would actually run that PHP file and echo the contents of that file. But that's not what we're seeing. We're actually just seeing the contents of that PHP file. So the fact that it didn't actually execute our PHP code means there's probably some sort of protections that is preventing any sort of code from running, which is pretty common on any sort of form like this when you're uploading your own files. And that's to prevent the type of thing that we're trying to do right now. They don't want people to be able to upload their own code and execute it on their web server. But a lot of times these protections are kind of narrow and they're only focused on where they think you're going to try to execute code. So if you're able to upload something to a different area of the server, then you might be able to actually execute your code and get around that protection. So if we take a look at this post request where we actually uploaded that web shell, we can right click it and send it to repeater. And if we scroll down in this request, we see here is the actual contents of our PHP file. And right here we see there's this file name parameter. And if we just resubmit this request like it was before, we see that it says the file avatars/webshell.php has been uploaded. But that's the location where that protection is in place that is preventing us from executing our PHP code. And you can see right here in this GET request that webshell.php is in the avatars directory, which is inside the files directory. But clearly there's some protection that is preventing us from executing our code when it's inside the avatars directory. If we can back up one more layer and maybe upload that file to the files directory, maybe that protection is not actually in place there. So back in the repeater, if we look at the file name parameter, maybe we can do a directory traversal attack and actually move where it's uploading that file. So instead of the file name being webshell.php, if it's .. that should take that file and move it up one layer in the file structure and put the file there instead of in the avatars directory. So if we send that, it's still saying the file was uploaded to avatars/webshell.php. So clearly it's ignoring our directory traversal that we're doing right here. So what it's probably doing is it has some sort of protection on that field that actually strips out special characters. But there are tons of different ways you can try to bypass these sort of filters. And this kind of thing applies to doing SQL injection, cross-site scripting, pretty much anything where you have user supplied input that you're trying to get past something. And there are all kinds of cheat sheets and stuff online that you can look up that have different sort of encoding and different kinds of filter bypasses you can try. But if we look in the file path traversal section in the Web Security Academy, they have this listed right here. That is the URL encoding for the .. which encodes to %2e, %2e, %2f. So if I just copy and paste that and then go back to our repeater and I replace that .. with the URL encoding of those characters, and I try sending it again, and this time it uploaded the avatars/.. /webshells.php. And in theory, if this works like we think it should, that should mean that instead of being in the avatars directory like it was before, it should now be one layer up in the files directory. And with any luck, they don't have those protections in place that prevent us from executing our PHP code there. But to test it out, I'm just going to take this GET request that we sent earlier that returned the contents of our PHP file, and I'm going to send that to repeater. And I'm just going to take this file path in this GET request, that's files/avatars/webshell.php, and I'm just going to take avatars out of that file path. So if this worked like we think it did, and it uploaded our web shell to that files directory, this GET request should execute that PHP file, and that should grab the contents of the file that we need. So I'm just going to send this request, and there we have it. It got the contents of that file. And now if we go up to submit solution, and we paste that in there, congratulations, you solved the lab. So in order to solve this lab, it took a few different things. We had to find a file upload vulnerability that allowed us to upload files that are not just regular pictures. Then once we had the file on the server, we noticed that there was some sort of protection that was preventing code from running on the server. So then we had to do a directory traversal attack in order to move that file that we were uploading to a different location on the server where that protection was not in place. And when we were doing that directory traversal, we also had to get around some filters that were filtering out the special characters in our file path. So this is the kind of thing that you need to think about anytime you have a vulnerability or something that you think might be exploitable. A lot of times the first thing you try, it's not going to work. They're going to have some sort of protection in place that prevents it from working. But if you go back and think about different sort of vulnerabilities and different sort of attacks that you know how to do, you can sometimes chain multiple different things together in order to get the result you want. That's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and got some value out of it, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.